Generous disposition of any boy I ever saw, his aunt would frequently declare. He's always ready to oblige. No matter what he is doing, he will throw it aside in a moment if I want anything done, or ask him to go on an errand into the town. Frank is very nice. He is very kind and all that sort of thing, but he goes his own way more, and I don't find him quite so willing to oblige as Julian. But then, of course, he is much younger, and one can't expect a boy of 12 to be as thoughtful to an old woman as a young fellow of nearly 17. As time went on, the difference in their characters became still more marked. Julian had left school a year after his father's death, and had since been doing nothing in particular. He had talked vaguely of going into the army, and his father's long services would have given him a claim for a commission had he decided upon writing to ask for one. But Julian could never bring himself to decide upon anything. Had there been an old friend of his father's at hand, ready to settle the matter for him, he would have made no opposition whatever. But his aunt was altogether opposed to the idea, and so far from urging him to move in the matter, she was always ready to say, whenever it happened to be mentioned, "There's no hurry, my dear Julian. We hear terrible stories of the hardships that the soldiers suffer in Spain, and although if you decide upon going, of course I can't say no, still there can be no hurry about it." This was quite Julian's own opinion. He was very comfortable where he was. He was his own master and could do as he liked. He was amply supplied with pocket money by his aunt. He was fond of sailing, fishing, and shooting, and as he was a general favorite among the boatmen and fishermen, he was able to indulge in his fondness for the sea to as large an extent as he pleased, though it was but seldom that he had a chance of a day's shooting. Julian had other tastes of a less healthy character. He was fond of billiards and of society. He had a fine voice and a taste for music, and the society he chose was not that most calculated to do him good. He spent less and less of his time at home, and rarely returned of an evening until the other members of the household were in bed. Whatever his aunt thought of the matter, she never remonstrated with him, and was always ready to make the excuse to herself, "I can't expect a fine young fellow like that to be tied to an old woman's apron strings. Young men will be young men, and it is only natural that he should find it dull at home." When Julian arrived at the age of 19, it was tacitly understood that the idea of his going into the army had been altogether dropped, and that when a commission was asked for, it would be for Frank. Although Julian was still her favorite, Mrs. Troutbeck was more favorably disposed towards Frank than of old. She knew from her friends that he was quite as popular among his schoolmates as his brother had been, although in a different way. He was a hard and steady worker, but he played as hard as he worked, and was a leader in every game. He, however, could say no with a decision that was at once recognized as being final, and was never to be persuaded into joining in any forbidden amusement, or to take share in any mischievous adventure. When his own work was done, he was always willing to give a quarter of an hour to assist any younger lad who found his lessons too hard for him, and though he was the last boy to whom anyone would think of applying for a loan of money, he would give to the extent of his power in any case where a subscription was raised for a really meritorious purpose. Thus, when the school contributed a handsome sum towards a fund that was being raised for the relief of the families of the fishermen who had been lost, when 4 of their boats were wrecked in a storm, no one except the boys who got up the collection knew that nearly half the amount for which the school gained credit came from the pocket of Frank Wyatt. The brothers, though differing so widely in disposition, were very fond of each other. In his younger years, Frank had looked up to his big brother as a sort of hero, and Julian's good nature and easy-going temper led him to be always kind to his young brother, and to give him what he valued most, assistance at his lessons, and a patient attention to all his difficulties. As the years went on, Frank came to perceive clearly enough the weak points in his brother's character, and with his usual outspokenness, sometimes remonstrated with him strongly. "It is horrible to see a fellow like you wasting your life as you do, Julian. If you don't care for the army, why don't you do something else? I should not care what it was. so that it but gave you something to
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.